we went. I get down to the Roadshow finally, and that was about February 20th. The last 10 days of February were finally. The S1's been done many times. Everybody's looked at everything. We've done the presentation. Off I go. I start in New York. Do New York. Actually, you and I managed to get together for a little bit at that time.
That's right. Yeah.
Did New York, did Long Island, left New York, headed down to Miami. At that time, we were just starting to hear little bits and pieces about the coronavirus in China. It was coming up as kind of an oddity that we would discuss here and there and at these meetings, but it hadn't really hit North America. In fact, it hadn't really broke out in Europe too much. It started to see bits and pieces in Italy, of course.
It's funny because you said that, as a matter of fact, the day that I met you, we met like towards the end of the day in the evening. Yeah. And I was coming from a meeting with a group that was looking to take their company public. They were in from China, and they were sort of hunkered down and stuck here because they couldn't go back home. Right. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, wow, I can't imagine what must that be like, that you can't go back home, like they're stuck here at the plaza or whatever. And so that must have been the very early stages before things broke out.
Got to Miami. And flying into Miami, I flew into Fort Lauderdale, in a thunderstorm, which,
never fun.
There are better ways to fly than to land during a thunderstorm. So that was, that had its own elements to it. But good meetings all through Miami, and then I was flying up to Chicago the next day because of the storms. Flight was delayed. I was supposed to take off about 7 o'clock. I didn't take off till 11 o'clock at night. I think I landed in Chicago, 1 o'clock in the morning, Chicago time. And the meetings are starting at 7 o'clock in the morning. I have an online phone call with a group out of Italy. So I met with the banker in his hotel room. We have our first call with a German group at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then we head off. We had, I think, 7 meetings in Chicago, a long day, met in the airport. And we're sitting in the airport having a beer, and we're talking about, taking sort of stock of all the meetings we've had. Right. This was the first leg of, I think by now we'd had, I'm going to say 20 some odd meetings in over 3 days in 3 different cities.
Wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You mean you don't just sit back and the money comes to you? That's not the way it works?
I was doing presentations in the car between meetings where I was going to present. So I was just talking.
Presentations between presentations. Okay. That's what it takes. That's what people have to understand. That's what it takes.
People talk about roadshows, and you think, I've given thousands of presentations in my life, but the level of concentration and the organization that goes in, we have 2 banks, they're setting up meetings. There's a car, I walk out the door, there's a car there taking you to the meeting. A banker's by the way, we have a call on the way to this next meeting. Wow. So we're doing a pitch in the car.
It's important for people to understand that. That's what it takes to get these things done.
It's quite a performance, and you're on. You've always you're tired, that's too bad.
Right.
Get another coffee in this. Oh, what do you need? Let's get going. And you're pitching people that are eating food that you're paying for, and you don't have time to eat because you got to go to the next meeting. So we go through this. We're in Chicago Airport, O'Hare Airport, after the end of the Chicago trip, and we're talking about, and the banker's still calling people. We're pitching them at the bar, and we're still selling. So now it's 6 o'clock at night, and we're having a beer, and we're hearing more and more about Corona. It's starting to become now kind of a steady part of everybody's conversation. And becoming a little more concerning because now it's starting to pop up. It's definitely entrenched now in Italy and in Europe. They're starting to be very concerned. There's a lot of reports. And I was heading back to Toronto for a day's rest. So I get back to Toronto and I'm flying out Sunday night to LA. So I get up and I'm going up to the airport. I'm just reading the news on my phone, and now it's full blown in Europe. coronavirus has hit, and Italy's in a state of emergency, and it started to spread into Spain, emergency, and other states. And it was like, wow, this is really something.
Wow. Okay.
But I was so focused on the roadshow, I get out to San Francisco. Sorry, let's go to San Francisco. It was definitely everywhere by now in San Francisco. They were starting to lock down certain things. I was doing presentations to some companies on the street in front of their building because we weren't allowed into the building.
At that point already?
At that
wow.
point. So I'm making presentations on the street. Some offices we're going into, some people want to meet a third party location in a restaurant or whatever. So a lot of coffee shop meetings, etc. Finish up and very successfully. And as I'm leaving San Francisco, one of the banks, Gunnar calls, says, you're killing it, man. We're going to be way oversubscribed. This is awesome. Everybody loves it. So I'm feeling pretty good. We're playing, go down to LA. We intentionally, we're making light of things. I'm drinking a Corona beer in the airport. There's a couple people walking around with masks on, but it was very rare, like 2-3 people, maybe, not too many. And we get down to LA, and we have 2 days of meetings in and around LA. The NBA was still on. We were thinking to go to see a Lakers game, but I was just too tired. I was going around, and at this time I'm with both. I have Maxim and Gunnar with me.
Okay.
And we had lots of great meetings, and we finished up, and I was with the Gunnar guys, and they said, "Would you like to go?" It was like, I think, 9 o'clock at night. We were all done. We'd finished our last dinner meeting. He said, "You want to go grab a beer?" And I said, "Yeah, maybe." And then when I started walking, I said, "You know what? I'm so tired. I think I'm going to throw up." I just actually, I don't want a beer. I want to go to bed. If it's all the same to you, I don't want to offend anybody. Yeah, no, whatever. He goes, "I think I'm going to go. You do what you want." Well, I went to bed. We got up in the morning. Oh, we had more meetings that day. So we had a couple more meetings before we went to the airport. And he goes, "Yeah, I got to my room, and I thought I'd lay down for a nap, and I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning."
Really?
We were both just.
I'm not surprised.
We were both just had one more meeting, then off to the airport, and back. They were going to fly me back to New York. So this is now, I think, March 4th, 5th. And I said, "Do I have any meetings actually in somebody's office?" They said, "Well, no, you're going to come back to the bank. We're going to just have some meetings in the boardroom." I said, "If it's all the same to you, I'm going to fly back to Toronto and just have those calls from home. We'll just do Zoom."
Makes sense, right? Right.
Which turned out to clearly be the right move. So I get back, and we have these calls, and then everything hits.
Everything breaks
Everything falls apart over that weekend. Literally over that.
At some point, did they just call you and say, "Listen, deal's on hold. This is not going to happen now"?
Yeah, they called me up on Monday. They said, "Look, this is not looking great. We're thinking we need to push it a week, see how things go." So we had to adjust the registration statement. Then the next week comes, and while this is happening, as you know, the stock market, Nasdaq, and the Dow were down 2,000 points.
Sure.
S&P's falling apart. Everybody's panicking. In the oil industry, the Russians and Saudis are fighting. It was like this perfect storm of bad news on top of the coronavirus. So as one person's deciding they want to come in, 2 people are dropping out. So we're going from, we already had over 11 million in commitments to 9 to 8 to 7. And frankly, what happened was we just had to really double down on the efforts.
Really?
I called people, talked them through, and the one industry that started to boom, because professional sports was shut down, the entertainment industry was locked down, people were in their houses, and a magical thing happened.
eSports has arrived.
Everybody went online. And they went online, and they were doing their YouTube, and they were watching the videos of cats in boxes and people rubbing their dog's belly and putting makeup on them and stuff, of course. We've all seen those, and they are hilarious. So I've watched a few of those myself. But what was happening was people who loved sports were starting to fall in love with esports.
course. They needed something.
And, yes, they were playing their console games, but what was really starting to track was the digital games of the traditional sports, the 2K League. Even the NBA players formed their own NBA 2K League against other NBA players.
Right.
Madden was taking off. The NHL was taking off. As I say, digital volleyball. That was taking off. So we were able to bring these fresh numbers to these presentations. Hey, Twitch is up 15%.
That's great.
Steam platform crashed because of the usage. And so we were able to hold on to the ones who believed, not just looking for a quick flip in an IPO, because a lot of the investors, they just look for the IPO flip and they're on to the next deal. IPO stock, they always get a couple special perks. We had to restructure our deal a little bit. We were able to hold on to the fans, the fanatics, the believers, and
let me ask you this: when you were actually, two questions. What gave you the confidence to say, despite the fact that the world is falling apart and obviously health-wise aside, we hope that at that time everybody was okay from a health standpoint, but despite the market crashing, what gave you the confidence to be able to say, you know what, I'm still going to move ahead and I'm still going to uplist? And number two is, what was the did the exchange itself have any reaction? Were they encouraging of it? Did they say you were crazy for trying to pull it off?
I think by now that's a given. Everybody had at this point in time that was entirely possible. I think had we not finished the roadshow, and had we not had such tremendous positive response on the face-to-face meetings, I think the banks might well have thrown the towel in, frankly. But we did have a substantial response, and I had a lot of support from the banks. I had a lot of support from our attorneys, who in fact actually invested, which is a very unusual set of circumstances. So they're terrific guys, and I don't know if I'm allowed to give out names on these types of casts, but if you
go look at the S1, you can see who the attorneys are. We'll give them a big shout out that way.
So, and I did where I started. I got back on the phone and I started calling. In the end, I raised a third of it myself.
Wow. That's it's a great story, from start to finish, from the business standpoint, from the going public standpoint. I think anybody who just listened to the last hour or so is going to take away a lot of valuable lessons just on what it takes to be successful in business: persistence, expectations.
Yeah. Well, Seth, as I mentioned when we were just casually talking, right up until 12:30 at night, the day before we were going effective, we were still on the phones, working people, working the deal, making sure, double checking. And if you're not prepared to do that, particularly, probably at any point in time, but particularly now, it's not the right play for you. Going public it's a hell of a lot of work, and it should be, because it's not for everybody.
Well, that's the takeaway. Going public, it's a hell of a lot of work. But listen, I appreciate your time and the story, and I think people have learned a lot about you, about the company. Again, ticker symbol GMBL, on the Nasdaq exchange. Congratulations again. And I think we all learned I know I learned about a very valuable lesson about persistence and about if you believe in something, to stick with it. So thank you for teaching that to me, and I look forward to getting together in person when this is all over.
Yes, I look forward to it.
All right, okay. Thanks, man.